What's up, everyone? This is Dr. Webb here. Thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure you subscribe. New videos coming every week. You don't want to miss them. Today I have Dr. Kumar, who, for those who saw her last video about IMG to becoming a cardiologist, I wanted to bring her back on to speak a little bit more about that transition or her time at the International Medical School and how she got into a competitive specialty like cardiology. Dr. Kumar, thank you so much for joining us again. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Antonio. So thanks for calling me back again. Just a little, update and a brief introduction about myself.
Tell them who you are and kind of what you do.
Sure. My name's Dr. Tishangi Kumar. I'm a second-year Cardiology Fellow at Cardiology Clinic, Virginia Tech University. My journey essentially has been, I'm an international medical graduate. I finished my high school in Dubai, and then I did my undergrad at University of Toronto, followed by my medical school at Ross University in the Caribbean. I did my rotations out in Miami, Chicago, and then I did my residency in Washington, D.C. I did a year of heart failure fellowship at University of Cincinnati, and then now this is my second year of general cardiology fellowship.
That's awesome. So we're gonna get straight to the point. A lot of people, one of the most common questions that I get is, how do you get from a international medical school to a U.S. residency? And on top of that, how do you get to a competitive one such as cardiology? What would you say to those people?
I would say, when thinking about going from a international medical program to a competitive, like internal medicine is a competitive residency in itself. I would say, you have to focus on your board scores, as well as, have a good mix of your rotations. And I would say during your medical school year, if you're sub-I in internal medicine is good, you can get a good letter of recommendation, which really helps you. And plus, what kind of scores should you focus on in terms of board scores? And I would say try not to focus too much on the score itself, because no program looks at you unidimensional. A person is multidimensional. So there's a lot that makes up your CV, including your board scores, your letters of recommendation, where you've done your rotations, what kind of experiences you've had, what people have essentially said about your work, and then what is your life outside medicine a little bit. So I would say focus on your step one scores, because those are by far one of the more important ones.
Got you. And thinking back to your medical school, even before medical school, you're applying to medical school. If you had to do it all over again, if you had an opportunity to go to international medical school, would you recommend that someone do that? Obviously, you're successful and you're a great example of something that it can happen as long as you work hard and, like you said, they look at the whole picture. But would you recommend someone going to international medical school?
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
But I would say if you had to do it all over again, if I had to do it all over again, I would have waited. I would have at least waited a year to try to get into a U.S. medical school. And the reason being is it's not that you're handicapped in any way. You can always, like we talk about, you can always overcome odds, because it's really about how you work, and hard work always pays off. But it's just it's a label that sort of stays with you for the rest of your career, and sometimes you won't get those kind of opportunities that you get as a U.S. medical grad.
So going from a international medical school to a U.S. residency, to get into those competitive specialties, I have some students that say, oh, my chances of getting into plastics or dermatology is pretty much non-existent. Is that true?
I don't think that that's true. I think, for example, if you know that you really want to do go into a good internal medicine program. Like I said, try to focus on getting into a good sub-I rotation. So start the work early, at least a year in advance. You try to set up a rotation there. Most academic centers have a way to apply, for an away rotation, and it's all on their website, and you can reach out to their coordinators, and most places are receptive on having people come rotate with them, because, that's what we're here for. Like, we want to teach, we want to promote. So, for medical students, I think it's easy. So if you get a good rotation, especially in the specialty that you want to focus on applying for residency, I think that looks really good on your CV. Plus, like, you truly get to experience what it's like to be in that field.
Gotcha. Can you speak about some of the pros and cons of going to international medical school? I know some people talk about the cost. It's harder to get into a U.S. residency. What are some other pros and cons that you kind of saw while you were in school?
Yeah, I think my biggest pro and the reason why I went right away is because I didn't want to wait. I finished my undergrad, like I had to finish a summer semester, and then I would have had to wait a whole year before applying again. Instead, I applied in August, September, and I was admitted into school, and I started January, like within 3 months. So, there wasn't a lag in my starting, medical school. So I think that's one of the big pros. The other thing is that, when you have this international experience, it really like develops your personality. Like, I tend to find this, and I might, it's just my own observation and my personal experience, is that, kids who sort of go to high school and then medical school right in the US, they're a little protected.
Yeah.
And they haven't sort of had to fight their way through the ways, you have to when you're an international medical grad. So I think it's a little character building.
You mentioned the name of your school kind of stays with you. Do you think that affected your chances of getting into a cardiology fellowship or to become a cardiologist at all? Did people bring that up, or how did that come into play?
Yeah, it came up a couple of times. I don't think I got as many interviews as I would have liked for fellowship. But it made the journey, I think, interesting. I think, I'm still where I wanted to get to. And so the story gets interesting. Your experiences get interesting, but I don't think that it truly hurt my chances as much as, people like to make it to be. I think everyone gets very scared, thinking that just because you're an international medical grad, you're never going to get it. And I say there's no such thing as never.
Got you. So say, for instance, there's a student who has applied to U.S. schools for, let's say, 3 years in a row, still has not got in. They have, decent scores, and they're contemplating going to international medical school. So you would recommend that they try to reapply to U.S. schools before going to the international school?
If it's been that long, I would say don't waste any more time, because what looks worse is the time lag on your CV. That what did you do in those years? And we say, right, trying the same thing over and over again without getting the same result, and getting the same result is called insanity. So, I think if you're not getting into a school within the first year of you trying, I wouldn't take more than a year to try. Then try to get into an international medical graduate, and then into international medical school, and then try from there.
Gotcha. For the doctors who graduate from, I'm not sure if you may know anything about this or not, who graduate from international medical school and they try to get into a U.S. residency, but they're international students, do you have any tips or suggestions that they can do? Because I get a lot of emails from students who are in different countries and they want to come to the U.S. for residency. How hard is that to do?
Yeah, that does get difficult, because you have to essentially establish clinical rotations in the US. Without any kind of US experience, it would be very difficult to get into a residency program. So, you know, either something like a research year here or like an observership or a clinical rotation. Those are the only ways that, because you need to be seen how you work in like a hospital environment here.
Gotcha. What other advice would you have for students who are thinking about going to international medical school or in international medical schools and trying to get into a U.S. residency? What advice would you give them?
I would say that, you know, if you're thinking about medical school and you're thinking, you know, I cannot imagine being anything else but a doctor, and my heart is set onto it, I say just do it. Because if you love it, you'll figure out a way to make it work for you. And your eye will never get off the prize. You know, medicine is a beautiful profession. I cannot imagine doing anything else. And the reason is you have to fall in love with your work every single day. Because, you know, there's no such thing as the journey ends. It keeps going and going and going. And so I would say if you want to do it, do it.
So if a student is in an international medical school and they're about to take their step 1 or step 2, how much time would you suggest that they take to do this? Because some schools, they only limit you to 6 weeks. And I think that most international schools may give you a little bit longer than that. Is that?
No, typically 6 weeks for step 1. Do not take longer than that. You know, the most common mistake people make is to reschedule and push their exam further and further without realizing that actually is more harmful than beneficial. You know, you don't do better by delaying taking the exam. So 6 weeks should be for step 1. For step 2, no more than 4 weeks. And for step 3, you have to do it during your residency anyways.
Yeah.
And so no more than two weeks.
Gotcha. And for the students who take step 1 from international medical school and they don't do as well as they, you know, wished, or they get a lower score, they still want to get into a specialty. What would you suggest that they do?
Like I said, you know, your scores are not the only thing. If you get a score that you didn't target for and it's a lower score, then build up your CV in other ways, such as do research projects, get involved early, try to do, you know, external rotations where you get good exposure. And to get into any kind of competitive residency, the biggest thing people look for is what was your clinical exposure? You know, how did you perform with, you know, the high acuity, low acuity? How did you work with all these people around you? So I would say boost up your CV in other ways if your score is not that great.
Gotcha. And I recommend that to students as well, who even in U.S. you know, schools, that if they don't do well on step 1 and they want to get into a competitive specialty, the next best thing to do is to rotate at different programs and just work your butt off, and your clinical grades and evaluations. Those things hold a lot of volume, and people really taking those things into account. So if you have a low step 1 score or not as competitive, rotate a program and just network, you know, work your butt off, do some research with them, and just show them that you are a normal, hardworking person. I think that's the best way.
And you know, most medical students, I find, like they get so caught up in this word research because it's so ambiguous, you know, and it's, you know, they try to chew off, you know, bite off more than they can chew. And so, you know, get involved in smaller projects first. Get the exposure of what it is like. What is the purpose of research? Why are we doing this? You know, start small before you try to like attempt to do a big clinical trial or some big basic science research. Because remember, those things take years, and you may not have years before you're applying for, you know, residency.
Yeah, very true. Well, Dr. Kumar, thank you so much for coming on. And like I said last time, even now your story is very inspirational to a lot of us. So thank you for speaking with us today. If there are any students that want to reach out to you, how would they be able to do that?
I'm on LinkedIn, and they can reach out to me on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I'm more than happy to answer their questions.
All right. And for everyone else, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure you subscribe. New videos coming every week. We'll see you next time.